BlogTalk Radio.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. You've reached Cleverness and Common Sense, the Spiritual Network Community Forum, and I am your host, Marie D. McCohnell, A.K.A. SisterFriend Marie. My co-hosts and calling guests will be discussing important issues and questions concerning spirituality and daily holistic living. Call into 714-888-7516 and don't forget to press 1 to get into the queue to share your thoughts.
Free knowledge, free the power. More than surviving, our lives thriving. Days in the shade, plenty lemons for lemonade.
Good Friday to you, and as always, we're excited that you're here with us because we just never know if we're going to be here ourselves by the time we come through traffic and scale mountaintops and swim across the English Channel to get here. I was in traffic so long, I forgot what street I was on. I said I have to get back. Well, we're here tonight, and you're with Cleverness and Common Sense, as our intro so wonderfully told you. And tonight's topic is clean up your space, and your life will follow. And this, I don't know about the rest of you, and I'm getting ready to bring on my lovely co-host, Lynda Fletcher, to kind of give you a gist of what we're going to be talking about, but do you have paper around the house that seems to have babies, or especially in the car? Little receipts give birth to other little receipts. But anyway, hi, Lynda. How are you? Lynda Fletcher.
No, my receipts don't give birth to baby receipts, but my plastic grocery bags do. I keep them in the broom closet, and they multiply and divide, and it's horrible. I know what you're talking about. Tonight, joining Marie is myself, Lynda Fletcher, and Kaugh-Hill, Margaret Bryant, and we're hoping Phillip McCohnell is going to join us later on, but we're just going to have to wait and see about that. As Marie said earlier, we're going to talk about how to clean up your act. And this includes your personal space, your environment, your room, your house, your car, wherever your living space is. It includes your mind, body, spirit, emotions, and we may just touch on a few other things besides that. Now, if you're interested in this subject at all, you'll know that there are many, many experts out there who will tell you that by cleaning up your space, you'll clean up your mind. But not too many of them give you any reasons why. And so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight is how exactly does that happen? Why does that happen? And what I found when I was doing a little bit of research was that there is a new star in the sky concerning the area of cleanup and organization, and her name is Marie Kondo. And she has written a book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And that seems to be a bestseller. What I read about her sounds like it's well-deserved. It's worth it to take a look at that. And a quote from Marie says that if it gives you joy, you can keep it. That's your deciding factor. Now, we're going to talk tonight about how these things interact, the mind, the body, the spirit, and the environmental. And so I'm going to ask Marie right now to give us her thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts kind of went all over the place because this, being a counselor for years, as well as working with people and children in and out of their homes, I see where it all kind of comes together in a big ball called your life. And that ball can be a really shiny, pretty golden ball, the kind you buff up and show off to everyone. But inside the ball, there's styrofoam. It's all crumply, too, and maybe a little soggy. So what's on the surface isn't always what's on the inside, and sometimes it's all crumply and raggedy little football on the outside, and inside there's a heart of gold and a beautiful life, So it's really hard to judge the old-fashioned saying, a book by its cover. If your life is making you somehow uncomfortable, there's something going on there. And cleaning your life means just that. You get rid of all those things that are unnecessarily drawing your focus and your heart away from its center. And I say heart because if you come, let's talk about physical space. You come in your house and it's not the way you want it. And if you have kids, that happens a lot. Or sometimes husbands or wives, it depends. It's not the way you want. A little bit of your heart doesn't smile, and you can also get overwhelmed by your space, but that emotional space, kind of physical space, tumbles into the emotional space, and then your emotional space feels really clouded and confused. So we thought on this show, I'm getting a little bit of a feedback, but hopefully you can't hear it out there and listening in. But one of the reasons we wanted to do this show is to give you some concrete thoughts about what cleaning up your life and your space is all about so that your life does follow. But first you have to get to the nitty-gritty and basically get out the bucket and get out the cloth and get out the brush and get out the whatever you're using as a cleaning agent, even if it's your emotions, and start cleaning. So that is the point of tonight. We're going to talk bit by bit, piece by piece of each area of our lives and see if we can pull it all together. So that was what I was thinking.
And Marie and I were talking yesterday about this subject, and I don't know if I was getting myself across very well or not, but I was very frustrated over the idea of how living in a cluttered house cluttered up your mind. Where's that connection? What exactly happens? And I do have a list here of 8 reasons why mess causes stress. And so I'll share that with you right now, and maybe that will give us a little more attention to what we're trying to do here. Clutter bombards our minds with excessive stimuli, visual, olfactory, tactile, causing our senses to work overtime on stimuli that aren't necessary or important. Clutter distracts us by drawing our attention away from what our focus should be on. Clutter makes it more difficult to relax, both physically and mentally. Clutter constantly signals to our brain that our work is never done, and I personally think that is a key one right there. Clutter makes us anxious because we're never sure what it's going to take to get through to the bottom of the pile. Clutter creates feelings of guilt, I should be more organized, and embarrassment, especially when others unexpectedly drop by our homes or workspaces. Clutter inhibits creativity and productivity by invading the open spaces that allow most people to think, brainstorm, and problem solve. Clutter frustrates us by preventing us from locating what we need quickly. Example, files and paperwork lost in the pile or keys swallowed up in the clutter. So I thought that was as close as I could get to an explanation of the question that I was asking. Why does this happen? And like I said, I think this idea that it signals to our brains that our work is never done is a key one, because if you're focused on all the things you have to do, how can you clear your mind to meditate, which is probably the next important thing that we need to do. Margaret?
For me, you have to give me a moment because I'm going to have to put myself on mute in between. I don't want to cough anybody's ear off. For me, clutter is all of those things, and I used to be a really big one for clutter. Something switched in my life, and that all changed. But for me, clutter was, I realized later on, comfort. When I had all my things around me, I didn't feel so alone. And the house didn't seem so big because it was filled with stuff. By no means was I a hoarder or anything, but I had a lot of knickknacks and a lot of plants are one of my things where I will turn a room into a jungle if you give me the opportunity. So for me, that's more about comfort. And I know that has an attachment. A lot of people have an attachment to that because of comfort. And also fear. We live in a society where we grew up with belief systems of lack, that there was never going to be enough, or we grew up in a society where you fix things. We weren't a throwaway society. So if something broke, you fixed it. And if something broke beyond repair, then you saved the pieces for repairing the next object. So, or I can't throw this out. Somebody else might need it later on, or my kids are going to have a home of their own, so I'm going to save these dishes and these pots and pans and so it just starts and starts and starts from there. So a lot of it is about how we grew up as children, as a society as a whole, and it is a very, very much mental and emotional attachment to things. Yeah, I'm off my soapbox.
That's okay. I absolutely agree. I personally don't think plants are clutter. I'm a big plant person too.
Well, at one time I had 40 plants and 8 of them were trees. But I did have a big house with huge windows too. But yes, I absolutely love plants.
Yeah, I have a small sunroom on the south side, and that's where all my plants are. My husband calls it the jungle room. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But at some point in this conversation tonight, we'll talk about how plants are good for your spiritual cleansing, because they are. But I'll wait until we get to that to talk about that.
Yes, this is Marie again. And on the topic, since we're on the physical aspects, our physical space, because that's one of the spaces. And then we'll talk about all the mind, body, spirit, and all the rest of the points of view and focuses on that topic. But I was just thinking, there's some noise in the background. Somebody's mic is scratching. But anyway, somewhere along the line, you collect things because they're pretty. You love them. Now, we're talking about physical space right now. And we're not even getting to the people who are hoarders, which is a mental condition. We'll talk about that a little later. But just so many cute things. But if you ever go to secondhand stores or consignment shops and you look at all of these wonderful, beautiful things that people spent their hard-earned money on, and they're sitting there on sale for $1 or $2, or the secondhand stores actually are getting kind of expensive because they know people are going there because of, they can find old things. But there are clothing with still the price tags hanging on them in consignment shops, in secondhand stores. Money and energy was spent to buy those things, and it's not all bad. You have those things that you really love, and for a moment they give you joy. I think the part that we have to remember is when you get at a certain age, for us who are older, you're not taking it to the nursing home with you or the senior citizen building with you. And what do the children usually do with most of your stuff? They toss it. So the point of view is holding on to things that are material, as I think it was Lynda was just talking about material things, so much to a point where they're taking over your life and they're taking up your space is really kind of futile. Usually that wedding dress you hung on to forever does not get worn at your daughter's wedding anymore. You could ask her in advance, but most likely not. Those trinkets you got at Disneyland, and, you spend a whopping $25 on a little thing that's sitting up on. Most of that stuff was fun while you got it, but think of the money. And this is economics. Think of the money that you could have saved from spontaneous excitement buying. So point is, this stuff is, look at the Home Shopper Club buyers. I see the UPS man running up and down the street. First he brings the stuff that they buy, and then he comes and has to pick it up and take it back, So at some point, you're going to get an overabundance of stuff in your physical space. And then you're going to not have the energy to organize it. So I'm going to turn the stage back to you two, but do you know what I mean about just keep buying and holding on and holding on? That's it. Buy, hold, buy, hold.
Well, actually, Marie, I have 5 reasons that you hold on to clutter. Number 1 is memories of happier times, a sense of security, remorse over bad buying decisions, fear of letting go, and it's just too overwhelming. I'm assuming that means it's too overwhelming to get started. So that's the reason people hang on to that stuff. And I think that that's sentimental. This is memories of happier times. That's sentimental. I still have my wedding dress. I'm not going to give it away. I don't know what's going to happen to it when I'm gone, but I'm not going to give it away.
Well, as I said, it's good to hold on to those things that actually give you joy. But how about when those things that give you joy are accumulating over 40 years?
Yeah, but I personally when my hours got cut at the store, I started cleaning out closets and drawers with a vengeance, and I still have a few to go, but my enthusiasm has waned quite a bit since I started, so I'm a little bit slower at it now. But I really am pretty good about keeping things weeded out. I don't like the clutter. It bothers me.
My son, I was writing in the chat room, he abhors clutter. He just cannot deal with it at all. I wonder why. I ruined him.
Because you had it?
I did. I had clutter. I had this. I had knickknacks. I had that. And I had a huge house. I had a 3-story house. So trust me, I had plenty of room for storage. So I had, beautiful dishes and all kinds of stuff, and like I said, in plants. And he just he likes free-flowing empty space. He doesn't want to have to pack it up and move it. And if something gets a little hole in it, instead of fixing it, he'll throw it out and he'll go buy a new one.
Well, that's the generation, I think, too, don't you?
His is more about because I was such a clutter person.
Oh, yeah, because
not a hoarder by any means, but like I had a whole library. I had one whole room that was a whole library of books. I'm a lover of books, and my parents gave me all kinds of books, and everybody gave me books, and he's like, Mom, what do you need all these books for? You're not reading them. You've already read most of them. Why don't you give them away? But because somebody else might want to read them, or I can donate them to the library later on, or, it's just like that. There's something about showing that, like, if you had stuff, I'm just making this connection now, if you had stuff, then you weren't poor.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I want to back up to a minute, though, about the kids, that generation, and tell a story about my youngest daughter. And I use this as an example all the time, and it's so simple, but it just irritated me so much. I would have them clean up their room, and when they were done, I'd take the trash can and look through it to see what they threw away. And I remember one time taking a pencil out of the trash can that had never even been sharpened. And that's the attitude of that generation, and my girls still kind of have that attitude. I'd rather throw it away than walk over and put it in the drawer so someone else could use it. And I'm not that way, their dad's not that way, but that generation seems to be very, it's kind of an entitled generation, and I don't think they always get it from their parents because I know they didn't get it from us. So I think that makes a difference too. But that's my little contribution to that part of it.
Well, I know personally, this is Marie again, I feel, and I remember a long time ago, I grew up in a very neat house, but it had things in it. I mean, it was furniture and things in it. And, they were orderly, but it was still stuff. And then we went to visit, when I got married, I went with my husband to visit a doctor friend of his that worked at the hospital with him. He was an older doctor, and his wife. Their house was almost Spartan. I mean, nothing was visible. Everything was in a tight location. I mean, the house had space. You could feel the energy flowing through their house. I was so impressed with that. This doesn't mean that it was better. It just meant it felt freer. And if you look at, we'll talk about feng shui and some other modalities about energy and dealing with the freeing up of the energy and the flow of your house. A house can be built incorrectly that breaks up the flow of abundance, or a house can be built incorrectly to keep joy from coming in or health. We're going to talk about some other things like that, too. Let me tell you about making up your bed. Okay, I have always made up my bed. I've just done it until this year. I would say in the last couple months. I haven't made it up every day like I normally do because I'm getting out of the house early. But I tell you, making my bed makes me feel good when I come home and see it made. Does that make sense?
I'm a bed maker.
When I walk in the house, I want to see it nice. When I go on a trip, I make sure everything's just perfect. Because when I open the door, when I come home, I want to go, oh, how pretty, how nice. And once I have a friend, and she would come over, and another friend, two of them would come over and start rearranging stuff for me. But they would leave half of it not in place. And I was like, oh, they've been here again. It's not
Marie,
healthy.
this is Ann. When you're speaking of the bed, that is something that I am just almost obsessive-compulsive about. If the bed is left unmade, I can't get in it till I make it. I don't sleep well. I really, honestly do not sleep well if the bed has been unmade. And like you said, that's something all my life. And the trip is the same way. When I leave, I want the house neat and clean and in order because when I come in, I want to put down my bag and know that I've reached home and it's safe and comfortable and I can get right into bed.
Yep. And something, Ann, there, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's the reason I always make my bed, too, because I hate the thought of getting into an unmade bed. I know it's ridiculous because it's the same sheets, whether it's made or whether it's not made, but to me the sheets feel dirty if the bed's not made.
And that's the exact feeling for me. It's just like unkept, and there's just something about the feeling. It just does not feel right.
Nope. Oh, go ahead, Ann.
I was going to say the other thing that I like that about, and everyone would laugh at me, and people probably will snicker about this when in the archives or who are listening, is reading the newspaper. I cannot read a rumpled newspaper. So whenever the newspaper landed at the house, everyone knew that they could not touch the newspaper until after I had finished it. Because if it were rumpled or pieces were everywhere, I was just not in a very good mood.
You know what, Ann? In the Wall Street Journal, a guy by the name Dr. Seth Meyers, he states that extreme clutter is related to OCD, ADD, and perfectionism. So
that's a big
there you go.
isn't it?
So it's like, nope,
how
I can't
can
do
clutter be related to perfectionism?
Oh, because but not having clutter would be the perfectionism.
Oh, not having. I didn't hear that. Not having color.
Right.
Okay. Yes. Let me read this about making a bed. And for those of you out there going, oh, what the heck are they talking about? It's not that serious. But we're going to get to the important part in 1 minute. Curious. This is an article in Psychology Today. Make Your Bed, Change Your Life by Judy Dutton, Gutton. And she wrote this on the bread. Bed makers are happier and more successful than those who don't. So you think, oh, yeah, sure. But they did research. She Googled it, and there was a survey of 68,000 people by Hunch, HUNCH.com, said 59% of the people don't make their bed. 27% do, while 12% pay a housekeeper to make it for them. I've done that. Okay, here's what disturbs me, she said. 71% of bed makers consider themselves happy, while 62% of non-bed makers admit to being unhappy. Bed makers are also more likely to like their job, own a home, exercise regularly, and feel well rested, whereas non-bed makers hate their jobs, rent apartments, avoid the gym, and wake up tired. All in all, bed makers are happier and more successful than their rumple-sheeted peers.
I believe it.
But why?
I agree, and I can tell you from experience, all my life I was never a bed maker. And when I moved to New York and I started taking Reiki classes and other holistic healing modalities, and my life really changed, and I was no longer depressed, and I was happy to get up and go to work every day and didn't lay in bed till the last ping of the clock and everything. I started making my bed every day. Now, it wasn't a perfectly made bed, but it was enough that, I pull the covers and blankets over, and it looked nice. And I was like, my mom came to visit, and here I am getting up early in the morning and leaving plenty of ample time before I have to leave and making my bed and everything. And my mother said, what happened to my daughter? And it was attributed because I was no longer depressed. I was happy to go to work. I wanted to get up. Even though I might have been tired, I got up early and because I didn't want to have to rush around. And I used to constantly be late. Every day I was late. And that changed, too. I was never late anymore.
So, Margaret, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
The part about being not late or making the bed?
Yeah, did making the bed change your attitude, or did your new job and something else change your ability to want to make the bed?
That's a good question, Lynda.
It was when I started taking the Reiki classes, and I was no longer depressed.
Okay, Margaret, explain Reiki to our listeners who might not know what Reiki is. And by the way, I think Phillip's here.
Well, Reiki is learning how to move energy and to release blocks and work with the chakra system. And Reiki can do many things. It can heal. It can clear. It can make you first and foremost make you feel better. And as with almost any healing modality, if you're going to learn how to use it to help someone else, that energy has to flow through you first. And therefore, the healer is healed. And that's what happened. I started with the Reiki, and I began to get healed in many different areas of my life. And the more I got healed, the more I dove in to find out what else needed to be healed, because I was feeling so good that I never wanted to go back to the way I had felt before. So that's what Reiki did for me.
Well, that kind of opens up our conversation to spiritual cleansing, which would, in my book, would be the next step. I think your cleaning up of your environment is the first step for a lot of the reasons that we just talked about, and then moving on to spiritual and emotional cleansing would be next. Now, what I find, from my own experience, I find that for me, meditation is very difficult if I am anxious or stressed or busy. There has to be quite a few things taken out of the picture before I can sit down and focus my mind. And so it makes sense to me that cleaning up the clutter in your environment would be one of the first steps before you go on to meditation. I don't know how about the rest of you ladies feel about that. Do you agree?
I think
agree.
Phillip's on the line. Phillip, are you here?
Yeah, hello. Yes, can you hear me?
Hi. Yeah,
Hey,
you
good
want
evening.
to chime in, whoever so far, then we'll go to everyone else.
Sure. I believe that starting with one's environment is definitely a crucial step, an outward environment, and then drawing that within, just like with a deep cleansing breath. The cleansing of one's home, as when I was growing up, our mother kept a very clean house with a ready workforce of all of us to help do that, but she would always open the front and back door and sweep from the front to the back of the house. And it was very important to get all the corners clean and everything, because we had so many people. Of course, there's a chance for, passing on germs or colds and things. So it was very important to keep things clean and wash hands. But beyond that, like with the bed, I found that really interesting part of the conversation, because I remember being little with her and going around making up all the beds, or changing the sheets, I should say, because everybody in our house had to make up their beds. So she would explain to me that the fluffing of the sheets allowed oxygen and air to get into the sheets, which took away, or which replenished the oxygen in the bed, which at the time I didn't understand what she meant, but learning later that the skin actually breathes made sense to me. And also it got rid of whatever energy, negative or whatever, we released during our dream state, to kind of shake all that out. And I used to always be curious why she always pulled the top cover all the way up over the pillows. And her explanation for that was because even with the house being clean, there's dust and negative things that can come and settle on your pillow, and that's where you lay your head every night and put your face. So it's important to shake out the pillows and put those back on, and then to cover them up. So when you did get back in bed, like Ann and everyone was saying, that it was fresh, and it would actually quiet and soothe your body and your energy when you came into it. So all those things, having an organization and how you put your clothes in, and I did do some reading as well, like Lynda, and I believe it was the same lady she mentioned, and there were some great tips, even about how you put in your clothes in your drawer instead of stacking them, to put them vertical next to each other, so you could actually, when you open your drawer, you could actually see everything that's in there, as opposed to having to move everything to look. So that clearing out, so you don't always have that overwhelming feeling of something left undone. I think that's what can be overwhelming for a lot of people, and it just keeps stacking and stacking on top of itself. And my mother was great at saying, always take a piece of the pie at a time. I remember we wouldn't clean the whole house in one day. It was a week-long journey. I mean, we'd start at one end usually and work our way through, which included a rotation of doing laundry and ironing and all the time when she was cooking. She was constantly in motion, but really the whole thing was a process. So one day do one thing, next day work on another part, next day work on another part. And from my own experience, I know that it's very easy to hang on to things that, as you all mentioned, things that give you joy in that moment. Like Peppy was talking about buying the little $25 thing at Disneyland and then sitting there looking at it and going, what was I thinking? And it's still sitting there. It's still sitting there. And I have to dust it. I have to dust it once a week because it's still sitting there. But, you know, and to be able to release those things actually clears space. And clearing space means one less thing, because everything, as we know, contains energy, and it can be positive energy as well. But sometimes it's just a distraction. You know, it's just another thing. It's not something that is feeding us or giving us positives necessarily. The memories are. Don't get me wrong, like Lynda talked about her wedding dress. Those are positive memories for her. But for some other people, it may not be. And there has to come a point of letting it go. And, you know, we go through our things and we start packing up things. And I have boxes of some things, and I try to always go through at least once a year and say, you know, do I need that, or can I give this to someone else? Will it bring someone else more joy to have it than me? Because it's really not that anymore for me. It's just something I have. And I think that leads into the part about the spiritual cleaning as well. As we start with Reiki, as Margaret was talking about, with the breath, it starts with the breath, and the healer must first charge themselves, and with the deep breathing and charging ourselves and our chi, our own chi, it actually, once we start allowing it to flow through us and out to others, as she said, we become healed as well. And that's the same thing can be said for your home. You know, I love plants as well, and I think plants are so important because they breathe. They help us breathe. Wow. I mean, that's fantastic. Why wouldn't you want something that helps you live? You know, one of the essential things of life, air, positive. So it's a two-way street with those. Anything that I think gives you joy, brings you happiness, those things you keep. Anything that doesn't do that and you're just carrying, I think weighs you down and clutters you. And so if anything, by sharing, sometimes there are people who are in need of those very things that we just have, but we don't really need. We actually can re-energize them when we give and pass them on to others.
And save the planet.
Yeah. As you all mentioned, you know, we come from a different generation than this new generation about recycling and doing things. I mean, not all people, but really, I mean, our parents were depressionary kids, so you didn't just throw things away. You as Margaret said, you repaired them, and you replenished them, or you kept the parts. You had a junk drawer or parts drawer where you reused those parts over and over, whether it was your car, your bike, or whatever. It wasn't so just disposable. And I truly believe the young generation doesn't really appreciate that as much, you know. So, and
I think
to donate. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say this generation coming in now is going back to gardening and recycling. They're more conscious, and maybe some of the children in the 60s raised those children.
Right, I agree with you.
Groups, yeah, there's a group that don't understand, and there's the other group. They're champions for the planet.
Right, exactly. We definitely rally behind them.
I was reading an article in Psychology Today, too. It's called by Emily Dean. She's an MD, and she's in psychiatry. And it's called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And she actually was reviewing a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo, Kondo. But I wanted to skip down and just read what Ms. Kondo in her book was suggesting you to do. First of all, as Phillip mentioned and everyone mentioned, you can't dive in and do it all at once because it becomes emotionally overwhelming. It's just too much. So pick one corner a day, one project. To get the dining room table so you can see it without all the books, the paper on it, because where does everybody put everything on the dining room table, right? So start with one thing. Don't overdo it. But here's what she suggests. Marie Kondo says, here's some rules for cleaning up before we go to the emotional part. But the emotional part will probably go with this as well. 1, purge, P-U-R-G-E, first, and purge everything in one go or in a brief period of time. Keep only those things that give you, as Phillip and everyone said, a spark of joy. Number 2, purge by category, not by room, starting with clothes, followed by books, and then papers. Okay, and then miscellaneous, and then finally mementos. There's those mementos. Those are what you hold on to. No, it's Disneyland. This method will show you all the duplicates you've been hiding around the house and make the purge far more effective. Number 3, do not invest in smart storage solutions. Complex storage is for hoarders. Okay, do you hear that? Complex storage is for hoarders. Get rid of the stuff rather than figure out how to store it better. I have a friend, she's been paying for storage $200 a month for, 10 years now? And the storage guy told me at one of these big storage places, he said he laughs. He said people put stuff in storage and never, ever come back to it. And then they end up selling it, and they're paying for this. Well, who sees it? And when I lived in a building where the children came and put their grandparents and senior citizens home and put beautiful things down on the garbage. Just think about it. Number 4, and this is, I think, the last one. It says, that said, store things folded and standing up vertically, never stack. Stacking doesn't work well in drawers. It wrinkles clothes and leaves the clothes and the stuff at the bottom hard to get to. This ruse as a head smack moment for me. Then she goes on talking about herself. But that's a book, so there are books. Now, we're just talking about normal things. Now, there are emotional things, as Margaret alluded to, and we all have. When you're not feeling good, you look around your house, it's going to reflect that because everything in this world is you. Does that make sense? It's a reflection of your energy. It's like you created the space you're in, so your house is your internal being. So if you're finding clutter in your house, now we can move on to the emotional clutter, right?
Yeah, well, I can just add one more thing to that, Marie. I have a quote here by Jane Morris. She's a life coach, and she says, clutter in your outer environment is the physical manifestation of all the clutter going on inside of you.
Exactly. And how you prove that is clean up something and see how happy you get. Unless you have a psychological problem, and we'll talk about that too. What do you say, Margaret?
Definitely, and I wanted to say too about Lynda was asking about doing meditation, making sure space and everything was all cleaned up first. For me, I'll do the meditation first because for me, the housework and everything is going to be there the next day. It's going to be there the next moment. If my friend calls and says, let's go out and have a cup of coffee, I'm on that. If I feel I need to go meditate right then and there because something is really coming up in me, I know that if I go and meditate, that I'll be much more effective for the rest of the day than if I don't. So for me, I'll just go meditate and then come back and do the rest of the stuff after. So I do it a little bit differently, but that's because meditation for me is life breath. It keeps me functioning and on an even keel regularly.
You know what? This might be a good spot to mention meditative CD that I just got, because I will tell you meditation is difficult for me. And anybody who's listened to the program knows that I'm a big fan of Wayne Dyer. And I just finished watching or listening to his CD series based on his book called Wishes Fulfilled. And in that series, he talks about a meditation CD that he made separately in connection with a man who does tuning forks and different types of toning. And what this meditation CD is, and it's called the I Am Wishes Fulfilled Meditation. And what it is the sounds that this man has come up with are the same vibrational frequency as the name of God. And I just got it the other day, and I listened to it in bed one night, and I actually fell asleep before it was over, but I could not believe the way it made me feel. I think this might really be a key to my getting into true meditation. I just had chills the whole time I was listening to it. So I would recommend.
I'm glad you found it. I've had it for years.
Well, then you know what I'm talking about. Yes.
But I didn't get it from. I didn't get it from Wayne Dyer. He collaborated with, I believe, it's James Twyman and somebody else, and did that. And that's how I got it. Was through one of James Twyman's books. The not the Moses Code, not the God Code.
Yes, it was the Moses Code. That's what he mentions in the CDs anyway.
Right, but in the Moses Code, there's two different. There's a meditation that's at a different megahertz with the tuning forks than there is in the Divine Code one. They're two different things.
Oh well, I
have
don't know
both. But anyway, it's fabulous listening to different Schumann resonance, different frequencies with the megahertz with the tuning forks is fabulous. And then if you start adding in, that would be solfeggio. And then if you start adding in binaural beats, where you add in theta or delta, or even gamma, you go into an altered state of awareness very easily. Just by walking around the house and listening to it will put you in a different state of awareness. So, yes, that is a fabulous CD, and I would recommend that to anybody to listen to.
Yeah, I think I'm really going to like it. Marie, I know we need to get started on spiritual cleansing, and I would like to start out by giving the listening audience five signs that you need a spiritual cleanse. Number one, are you carrying around baggage from your past? Do you have reoccurring thoughts or stories that you just can't seem to drop and let go of? 2, do you feel guilty? Yeah, and this is going to cover everybody. So, 2, do you feel guilty for something that you did or said? Are you carrying around resentment, or are you feeling burdened by your regrets? 3, are you lacking direction or feel confused over what path to take? Do you feel stuck, lost, or unmotivated? Does something about your life just feel off to you? 4, are you in denial, or do you have a hard time accepting events as they are? Are you constantly wishing for things to be different? Are you constantly searching for change? 5, do you have pent-up emotions that are bubbling to the surface? Do you feel wronged or taken advantage of by others? Okay, now is there anybody who doesn't have at least one of those things? I think we all probably are in need of spiritual cleanse.
And again, spiritual cleansing and energy. We are energetic beings. It's pretty much much imperative that you go in and have someone help you. And we have a beautiful holistic community, even right here on the radio, of all of us who can help you go in and start working on the spiritual part of your belief systems. I work on a hotline. I'm a crisis hotline counselor, and I've also do spiritual mentoring in that. And all of you, I know, have talked to people and worked on people that most of the illnesses, and according to Louise Hay, are caused by this emotional baggage. And it can get, it'll stick in you. If you got a heartbreak, then guess what? Your heart's eventually going to do. And half the stuff, to me, no matter how horrendous this is, and I've talked to some people who have had horrendous things happen to them, but all you can say, this is the intellectual part now, that's the emotional part we'll still have to work at. How long are you going to carry that incident around with you when the person who perpetrated it or caused it, inadvertently or on purpose, doesn't even remember it happened? I know people who were abused as children, and that has ruined their whole life. So what do you do with that? I mean, how long do you want to carry it around? My aunt, remember Phillip, Aunt Angie, she used to give every child, she was a teacher, and at the beginning of the year she gave everyone a blank sheet of paper, just a piece of white paper, and she put it in front of each child, and she said, now, as far as I'm concerned, that's you, that blank paper. You're going to write on it who you are and how good you do in school. I don't know. I'm not listening to anyone else. You're going to show me. So as far as I'm concerned, you're all A students until you prove me different. And I think that's the blank paper is something that we might want to gift ourselves with or get help gifting ourselves with.
Well, do we all have some of our favorite cleansing techniques?
Before we move on to the cleansing techniques, I wanted to speak to a little bit about what we were just speaking about. And even for myself, as I've worked with Marie and some others on, my inner spiritual journey, and even recognizing blockages and things that I've held on to from my life as a child, as a young adult, and as a woman, one of the things that I noticed as I began to get better and let things go is how chilling it is when you encounter a loved one or a child or what have you, and whenever they're in distress, whatever the issue is in the moment, they can talk to you about it, and then before you know it, I call it the loop. The loop starts. And the loop will go back to that moment that they can't let go of, whether they were 17 or 27 or 37, and you'll notice in your conversations with them that this incident or that something that was so disturbing to them manages to loop itself back into stressful situations. And you'll do a Scooby-Doo moment where you go, ooh, and you're like, wait a minute, why are we talking about that? That doesn't have anything to do with, the accident that you had yesterday or whatever went on at work today. But somehow or another, that's stress and different upsets are a trigger to bring up all the old stuff bubbling from the bottom. And it brings it right back up to the top, and it has a tendency to keep the person or you in a state of upset about things that are just inconsequential or things that you can't change. So it's a tough thing to recognize it. And, one of the things is that, as you said, Marie, it's other people's stuff. Generally, when you think about how someone can come and disturb you, and you're just humming along and everything's great, and then they come and, as I call it, they come and have diarrhea all over you. And after they get finished, they feel better and they move on, and there you are in all the toxic soup, and before you know it, you're toxic. And whatever they brought to you and laid at your feet didn't have anything to do with you anyway. And when we look at, some of the things that are situational in our lives and everything else, even in the presence of parents and different things, and not to make any life issues small, but when you think of it in the context of that spoke more about that person and who they were at that time than it did about who you are and what you are. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Very much so. So, thanks, Anne. I mean, all of this, we're talking, but at some place, everyone has to have what you were talking about was the trigger point. I mean, even massage therapists have to be careful of trigger points when they when they're massaging someone, because I mentioned before they can trigger an emotional response that had to do with a past abuse that could have been totally forgotten. And so when we're at the point, for me, to release things that cleanse, first of all, you have to do an inventory, I think, about your thoughts. And there's a stream of consciousness that runs underneath your conscious thought. Your conscious thoughts are like just you thinking. But Margaret and I and even Phillip, we work with people on their unconscious level. So I'll be talking to someone, and I mentioned this before, and their spirit or their unconscious mind will be telling me something totally different telepathically. And the person who's conscious doesn't realize that all of that stuff is underneath there. They just see the surface. So in order to, for me, one of the first steps to cleansing the old stuff, sit down and write. Don't think about what you're writing, and people hate journaling. Some have journaled. But go back and read your journals. And don't just write them. Go back and read your journal. Pick out the things that are repetitive, like you were just saying, the things that are said over and over again. Pick those out, and then do the Ho'oponopono, which a friend told me about a long time ago, which is on YouTube. Ho'oponopono, feel it, and it's basically I love you and I forgive you. It's the forgiving mantra, and it's Hawaiian, I guess. And the whole issue is, if you forgive someone for what they do to you, it has nothing to do with them. It's about you releasing them, so you don't have to carry them around anymore. So that would be my thing. Make a list. Try to look at what I'm writing that's really painful to me, and then go and release it.
Right in with that journaling is inner child work. You can draw and write with your non-dominant hand, and that takes you a little bit deeper into your subconscious. In fact, I worked with a guy one time, and he had me write questions with my right hand and then write the answers with my left hand, and then draw pictures about what the subject was. And as I go back and look through those pictures occasionally, because I kept them, and I'm amazed at the insights that I'm getting from that, or didn't even realize it at the time. And then I go back and look at them and realize, oh, my gosh, that's what that was all about. And so I can personally recommend that. I think that really works.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. How about you, Phillip, Anne?
Well, as you were saying, just the journaling and examining, even if it's not formally journaling, a lot of times we have thoughts that come to mind really, really quickly. And I have a little book that I keep on the bedside, and then I have one that travels with me. And I will, as things come to mind, I'll write the date and I'll write the thought. Some days I may not have anything written. Other days I may have 2.5 pages scribbled through with, questions for myself or statements or observations. And in going back and looking at them, it can tell you, for myself, it tells me in a synopsis what I place my mind and my thoughts on. And a lot of times I'll look back and I'll say, oh, why in the world would have all the things on that particular day would I have latched on to that? And sometimes just the physical activity of crossing it out and saying, nope, no more of that, is a strong trigger for me to leave it behind, as well as writing it down to cross it out. In a sense, for me, is symbolizing the end of it.
Yeah, lists are great.
Mhm. And when you were saying that, Ann, I could feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't think they were my tears, or maybe all of our tears. Tears kind of well up because then you take that deep breath. You know how children do when they've been crying and they go, they get that breath in to let go.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's all right to feel bad, but it's also okay to let it go. Just let it go.
Exactly.
How about you,
and
Margaret? Go ahead, Ann.
No, I was going to say, and the letting go doesn't necessarily have to be swift. The letting go could be like tearing a piece of paper. You tear one little corner today, and you throw it away. And you continue till the paper doesn't exist anymore.
There you go.
You throw it all away.
Let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And then
just let it go.
You give birth to a new you.
Absolutely.
Yay.
It's and that's so much of what's going on, and what you were saying, Marie, about the feeling of the tears. There is a fear in letting go of what makes us comfortable. When you live in a house full of clutter, to let go of the clutter can be uncomfortable. But once the wind comes in and blows all the clutter and dust out of the corners, you can see things that you never saw. It could be the texture on the wall, how beautiful the tree is outside the window, but you could never see it because there was a bookcase in the way full of stuff. So when you get rid of all the clutter, you have a different view. It's a new view.
And on the emotional level, you don't even have a bookcase in front of the window. You just never looked at the tree before, or you haven't looked at it in years, and it's there, beautiful, stoically waiting for you to pay attention to it. You should walk into your house, that includes your body, every day, and just marvel at the beauty. Every corner you look in, there's something beautiful to mesmerize you and enjoy and happiness, no matter how simplistic your house is. Simple is good, but it still should be, the flow should be there. Thank you, Ann. How about you, Margaret?
As you said, go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret.
Go ahead, Phillip.
I was going to say it does require time in some cases. I mean, it didn't happen overnight in some cases. In some cases, it's instantly. We're talking about the emotional, whether it was due to some trauma or emotional heartache or loss, to come to a point where it is suggested to you, or you feel yourself, I want to be unburdened by this. And in the healing work that I've done and still do, some people are really ready to just unload, and they will just, instead of taking a little piece of that paper or tissue at a time, but just like want to ball it all up, burn it, throw it, and I can help them with that, remove those blocks. Other people, it is a baby step, little piece at a time, as Ann said. And so we have to revisit it each time we meet or come together until there is nothing left. And then there's that big sigh and that exhale. Or even sometimes it is tears. Just like you mentioned about trigger points at the massage. Well, with Reiki, we do the same things. And in fact, I usually brief people ahead of time. Don't be alarmed if you find yourself laughing uncontrollably, crying uncontrollably. You may even pass gas. There's all kinds of release the body will do. You don't realize how tense or how you've been holding it or how the pain isn't, And so as we go through to reopen an old wound, that can be very, very challenging and very emotionally challenged for people. And they can feel totally drained afterwards. Even if it's a charged session, they can feel the drain they feel is the release of that tension and burden. So for all those who are listening, be gentle, be kind, and be open with yourself. And as my sister said, your house should be somewhere that you love to come home to. I think we all kind of mentioned that, like the newly fresh made bed. And you can have that. Just be patient with yourself.
Well, that, and I want to add too, is that once you've worked so hard on this, on all of this release work on yourself, spiritual cleansing, clearing yourself, it's really funny because even though we might have a slight injury, let's say you stub your toe and it really, really hurts, but you don't want to scream out, or you just kind of breath and may even hold your breath. You're holding in that trauma and that pain, and it's going to come up somewhere else. So I've learned in my work that anytime I bang myself, I holler out, ow! I don't stifle it anymore because I found that I don't want to stuff that pain away somewhere else again after all the clearing work that I've done. So that's just a little tip for everybody that, we're in this process of always clearing and releasing and doing all this stuff, and something as little as stubbing your toe and holding your breath and stifling the words that really want to come out has a whole other process to repeat itself, instead of at that moment saying, ow, or swearing or whatever you want to do.
Margaret, I think that's so powerful, because I think of it in terms of some of the conditioning that we do with kids, and boys especially. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to let this out. So when you're frustrated and things are upsetting to you, like you said, holding on to that energy, it's going to find some way to release itself. It's going to find its way into some other little crevice. And it has a tendency, I think for myself personally, to find its way into my body, and something else will hurt or something else will be bothering me, and it'll have to do with, holding in a disappointment or an anger, or say, oh, if anybody knew that upset me, they would think unkindly of me, or, the thoughts of being judged about how you feel. And it goes back to that old adage, that they used to tell us about gas and everything else, better out than in. So when you think about it in terms of things that are upsetting, better out than in.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Better out than in. Like, oh, you can't stick that on me or poke it inside of me. I don't know how many people out there have actually felt other people's energy go into them.
Oh, I feel it all the time. And it's really, when I first started feeling it, it was scary. Because you would literally, it was almost like a magnet that are opposite polars. You know how that is when you played with the magnets and it would just push it away and you would come in contact with them and I would literally get this jolt, like, bam. And I would be like, oh, let me get away from here. This is not good energy here. And the sad thing is, you know, more and more, for myself personally, it's been a challenge because I experience those types of negative energy fields in the workplace, in places where you don't have the choice to just not be there. So that's where emotionally meditating and doing some things are really helpful in making sure that you're able to understand and separate yourself from the negative energy is really important, because sometimes we can't, you know, be away from certain situations, yet there is a negativity and negative energy associated with it that we have to be in contact with for reasons that we can't control.
Well,
which comes all the way back around to how important it is to have one's own house cleansed before you go out. That can give you endurance to deal with the onslaught of negative energy from outside, as well as when you're coming home to your actual physical house, removing your shoes or, you know, those kind of things so you don't track the energy back in with you. You know, at one point when I worked in the hospitals as a therapist, I kept like a garbage bin with a plastic bag outside my door. I would literally take all my clothes off and put them in there and go inside. I mean, you know, not completely, but at least my outward clothes. So I didn't bring.
Well, I got an image, Phillip, when you said take off all your clothes and go into the house. I got an image. I was a little frightened there. I said, pedophile. Oh, my God.
My house. I said my house.
Well,
right.
You know what? It's very interesting because, you know, all of this is very timely for me because as Marie and Phillip know, I just moved an entire household. And one of the reasons, you know, in working with Marie and everything else, you know, knowing that where I was living, there was a lot of toxic energy in around me and the other people who lived in the building, and how it was manifesting itself in negative ways toward me. And having moved now to where I'm in a positive space, and I was sharing with Marie that once I moved in, I took my which one did I get? I guess, what is it? It's the Dewdrop, the Young Living Oils or whatever. And I was burning my oils of cleansing in the house. And the reactions of two of the people that were moving me into the oils, they were just so confused. Their spirits were just so confused by the cleansing that they literally had to leave my space. And I was like, ooh, thank you, because you're touching things where I am going to exist. And obviously your energy was opposed to the energy I was bringing in. And then even with that, having had a smoker in the place prior and making sure, you know, that we're sweeping all of that out and then re-energizing the space with the energy that represents myself and my family. And then Margaret and Lynda, to you guys talking about, and Marie about things that are sentimental to you, I am surrounded by boxes. And slowly I've been going through things and saying, this doesn't stay in this space. This doesn't stay in this space. This doesn't stay in this space. So, you know, to do that every so often with your thoughts, with your physical things, with your physical space is healthy. Throwing things away and throwing things out is healthy. There's nothing wrong with it. It's very good for us. Or giving them away. Exactly, because I'm setting a whole lot of stuff on the curb. So anybody can come and get it. If you feel you need it, come get it.
Hey, Ann, did you know? Hey, I have something to tell Ann.
I asked you, Lynda, did you have something to say?
Oh, when did you ask me? I missed that. But I do.
Go ahead.
If you put salt in 4 corners of each room for 48 hours, that will absorb the negative energy of the previous owners.
Thank you, my dear. I have some beautiful sea salt, and I'm going to put that in the 4 corners. Thank you.
And
you know, there was a book called Jambalaya. Oprah had it in her book club, and it had a lot of the, kind of magical things that the old folks used to do. And putting salt, I mentioned this on another show, putting salt in the 4 corners. Then they would take a wet broom, back when they had old-fashioned straw brooms, and then they would broom and sweep the salt out the back door. And that would take all the negative energy. So being a science teacher, I sat down and, as I mentioned before, figured out water and salt makes a solution, ionic solution. So, of course, the positive ions of the salt water are going to attract the negativity. Ta-da! So we're running down on our time. We haven't heard much from Margaret. Are you there? Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, I am still here.
Okay. Oh, are we supposed to do a commercial sometime around here or a sponsor thing? But before we do, Margaret, you do a lot with balancing energies and also balancing spaces. So what do you suggest?
Salt water is great. Placing crystals in the windows is great.
Saltwater bath.
Epsom salt bath. There actually is a bath that I know of. I don't know the exact recipe. I know that it includes Epsom salt, apple cider vinegar, water, and something else will remove negative energy. They used to use it in the old days as a possession for people that they thought were possessed. Baths, that they would use that for cleansing. So baths are great. Always breathing in, breathing out. That's a great way to clear your own self really quickly. All of those things are hugely, hugely important. Essential oils are great in spaces. I have sacred spray that I use, using sage. There's so many things that you can use, and they're all effective. And if you use multiple tools, double, triple the effect, and helping to keep you balanced and keeping your energy flowing and not stagnant. That's the best thing, we can do for ourselves right now.
And you know what, Margaret, we talked about plants before, and Sonia, and I never know for sure how to pronounce her last name. Choquette. Yeah.
Choquette.
She talks about that kind of thing on some of her CDs, and she really highly recommends broadleaf plants. She says don't use the sharp, spiky type leaves, but use a broadleaf plant like philodendron. And she said it won't hurt the plant, but they'll absorb the negative energy for you. And something else that I love is the Himalayan sea salt lamps. I have 4 of them, and they absorb. They work on what Marie was just saying about the negative ions. They absorb those, and they can change the mood, and they can clean the air. They're wonderful. They create wonderful ambiance.
It's really funny because I have one that I put it in the front room the first couple of days, and then I had my essential oils in the bedroom. So I'm switching those modalities out through various rooms in the house. But I'm thinking that I'm going to get a salt lamp for both of the bedrooms and one for the living room. So there'll be 3 in the house here. So we make sure that, in terms of it, we have a good flow of energy and spirit in the house. And that's the thing. As you guys were all saying, it's so important that your home is your sanctuary. So once you leave all of the things outside that you cannot control, that you have no dominion over, it's important that the space that you create for yourself personally is one that is reflective of a soothing spirit and calming, because once you walk through that door, you want to, as Phillip said, cast off, literally and figuratively, all of the burdens and cares that are associated with a world that we have no control over, because our personal space is just that, our personal space.
Ashe. And for those who want the recipe for the salt detox bath, it's, Lynda, 1/4 cup sea salt or Himalayan salt. I guess Himalayan would be better. 1/4 cup of Epsom salt, 1/4 cup of baking soda, and 1/3 cup of apple cider vinegar, and your favorite essential oil if desired. Peppermint or lavender. I don't know if I put peppermint. That'll wake you up. You won't go to bed that night. Margaret Ann got the big kit from Young Living, and she got a diffuser in it. So she's been diffusing mama. She's been doing the essential oils. We're going to have shows to talk about the essential oils coming up, and I think this might be a good time for our commercial.
To do our commercial.
To our commercial, our word from our sponsor. But to also, before we do that, tell everyone, including Dream Master and Wildflower Wind and our guests, and everyone else that came tonight and added their voices to the chat room. We didn't get a chance to read what you said this time because this is a shorter show, but we love you. Dream Master has so many great things to say, and that you can do this, and you have us to help you do it. Just call us, and also let us know how you're feeling about the shows, because if we don't know what direction to go in, or even if they're helping you. So feedback. Okay, Margaret.
So a word from our sponsors. My co-host and I of the Psychic Viewpoint Network would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Blended Herbal Treasures. Blended Herbal Treasures is a family-owned business started by Willow, also known as Rosie, John, and Jason. They have created and produced wonderful handmade soaps, hydrosols, salves, body lotions, bath truffles, waxed hearts, all leaving your body feeling soft, moisturized, and your senses invigorated and energized. The products are made with some of the finest organic ingredients and are infused with love. You can check out their products on Facebook under Blended Herbal Treasures, or their website address is bhtshop.com. We also want to thank Rosie for creating this great space for us to share information, to have these great shows, for positive forward movement and growth, health and well-being in a loving and supportive and safe environment. We have other shows throughout the week. On the first and third Fridays of the month, we'll have tonight's show, Cleverness and Common Sense. On Sunday nights, I have a show. Typically, there is a topic of discussion, a short meditation, and then I do a couple free mini readings at the end of the show. One Saturday a month, and it hasn't really been one Saturday, but on a specific Saturday, you'll see us doing an absolutely doable self-empowering show where we'll bring forward different tools, self-empowering tips, activities, meditations, CDs, crystals, exercises, all different kinds of things to help us through this journey. And they'll all coincide with the topic that we choose. This is also following through with a new show and then companion classes that SisterFriend Marie and myself will be holding, the daily self-care class, where we're going to focus on things to do for yourself on a daily, regular basis to help clear yourself, be able to move forward in a positive way, focusing on essential oils, crystals, meditations, those kind of things. So it'll be a much more focused, excuse me.
Oop, you okay? Well, when she's has a little thing going on, so I will just take over. But on the Daily Self-Care, it's absolutely doable Daily Self-Care show. It's branching over from the show, and then we'll have a class. You all right, Margaret? Because I want to make sure you know. I think she's okay. Phillip, take care of her. Reiki.
I'm on it. I'm already on it.
Okay, thank you. And make sure that you listen in and listen to the classes we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing a lot about essential oils and going into all the things that you can do to take care of yourself on an everyday basis, but we're actually going to give you the tools to do that. And also, Margaret and I will be inviting, whenever they're free, Anne to come and join us, as well as Phillip and Lynda when she can. So it'll be pretty full. And also, Dream Master said there's some huge energies occurring, and that's probably what's knocking us off here. Yes, Dream Master, that last show we did, we've all been getting knocked off by these energies, and we're cleansing. You know, while we cleanse our homes and our minds, divine spirit, heart and mind, and as some call God or the Creator, that beautiful force is also cleansing us. So your body's going to be doing things. Again, join us on Cleverness and Common Sense. Let us know if you like this show and if you want us to keep going with this. We are shifting to some other shows, and we might take the summer off. But if we get enough of a response, letting us know what you're interested in and also how these shows are making a difference, because we love seeing all of you, then please let us know. Look on Facebook under Absolutely Doable Facebook page, as well as our Cleverness page, and you can see when the next shows are coming up. And other than that, I think we've just said everything that we need to say. Thank you, Dream Master. Dream Master says, always enjoy being here, knowing you are here for us. We love you, too. Thank you so much. And Wildflower Wind's always with us, too. And we really appreciate you and our guests. Oh, Dark Star, too, has just logged in. Hey, hi, Dark Star. Well, everyone, I guess it's time to say goodnight. And hope to Facebook or wherever you can catch us on the Internet. Just put our names in. Google us. Hey, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Good night. And here is Can You Imagine by Ash Frost, talented young man who is kind enough to let us play. Good night.
surviving.
Remember, clean up your space and your life will follow. Good night.